We'll go ahead and get things started. So thanks again for coming out to this week's Ken Reeves Memorial Weather Briefing, and we're fortunate to have Dr. Nese host the briefing this week. Good to go.
So for those of you who don't know, you should know that Ken is a graduate of this department, 1983. Died tragically in an accident 6-7 years ago, maybe it's been now. Was always a proponent of these weather briefings. Worked at AccuWeather. Actually a scholarship, an AMS scholarship named after Ken. So he's a good man, and we decided to, in his honor, name these briefings after him. Also, thank you to Jake for organizing this. It's not necessarily easy to find people to do this, and it can become an organizational nightmare. So thank you, Jake, for putting in the time. A little bit of context. So this is who we are right now. Average high 77, average low 57. Dropping off quickly, as you know. September and October, the big slope gets steep. We'll be 67, 48 by the end of the month for the means. We're now losing daylight at about 19 minutes a week. You've noticed, I'm sure, as have I. So antecedent conditions, we're coming out of the wettest summer on record here. Also Williamsport and Reading, second wettest summer on record in Harrisburg. And we became close to setting some kind of a dubious record here in State College. 100 of the 184 days from March 1st to August 31st, so climatological spring and climatological summer had measurable precipitation. There's only one other year that had more than that. So that was your summer if you lived in the Northeast. This big blob of 150 or higher percent normal precipitation. Interestingly, western Pennsylvania, particularly northwestern Pennsylvania, did not share in the misery. It's actually a small area up there below average. It was quite a humid summer. I'm going to do a little feature tomorrow on Weather World about this. If you perceived this summer to be unusually humid, you were right. Here are two cities in Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, being more inland, I used 65 Fahrenheit as the threshold and simply asked the question, how many hours was the dew point at or above that value this summer? And you can see the 2018 stands above all the rest, going back into the 1970s. Certainly in recent history, for those of you who only have short memories. Southeast of the mountains in Harrisburg, a threshold of 70 would be more reasonable. And you can see that this summer also did sort of stand out in recent memory as a very humid summer. Temperature, just spend 10 seconds on this, it was a warmer than average summer almost everywhere. Here, we were a degree above average. It was a slightly warmer than average, extremely rainier than average, much more humid than average from the standpoint of dew point summer. So I'll steal this line from Fred Godomsky. If you don't know Fred officially retired from the university yesterday. Did his last Weather World show. He'll be around. His office is behind the electronic map wall. You really should say hi sometime. He's a legend around here. If you never had a chance to take a class from Fred, it's too bad because you'll learn a lot. The title he gave for tomorrow on his last Weather World map was Autumn is AWOL. And it will be AWOL for about another 48 hours with considerable warmth and humidity, warm and steamy. At best, an isolated shower or thunderstorm. Forcing mechanisms in this pattern might be the lake breeze front or the highest peaks of the Alleghenies. But with such warm air aloft, any convective activity would be hard-pressed to make much vertical headway. A cold front kind of leaks through here on Thursday, stalls, probably to our south for the most part, and an area of high pressure will build into our north, eventually move to our northeast. That'll turn our winds to the east. And my suspicion is this could set us up for a relatively cloudy, coolish weekend here. The amount of rain, I'm still a little unsure about until the next real disturbance comes in from the west, and that'll have some oomph to it. Probably Sunday-ish. And then there are hints that another warm-up follows that next week. And the tropics are heating up on schedule. You know about Gordon. It'll make landfall tonight, probably. I got a kick out of somebody. Somebody tweeted that Gordon will make landfall between New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama tonight, which, strictly speaking, is correct, but why not just say it'll make landfall in Mississippi? Because that's what lies between New Orleans and Mobile. I just thought that was funny. As a strong tropical storm or minimal hurricane, but there's a lesson in there. I think we all make it sometimes. We're strangely vague about things when we say up when we mean north. We say down when we mean south. If you mean south, say south. Don't say down. Anyway, that's a pet peeve. Moving on. So using this as an organizing mechanism, this is the National Weather Service 7-day liquid precipitation forecast. We all know this is a forecast, and as precipitation is the toughest thing to forecast of all the variables that most folks are interested in. So showing a 7-day sum is a bit edgy, but I'm using it as an organizing mechanism. You have the corridor of precipitation from Gordon, sort of a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday-ish kind of streak there. Then you have the cold front that will limp through here on Thursday shows up here as that arm of precipitation from northern Iowa up into the Great Lakes. And as it slides southward, its ability to lift is weakening with time. And so part of this corridor right here is that, but more of this is the next strong low pressure system, which will organize out here in the middle Mississippi Valley sometime in the Friday, Saturday, Sunday range, and then move east. And that'll have some lift with it. And that's really what this arm is right here. This is sort of a Saturday, Sunday, Monday maximum. May not end up in that specific place, but that's what that is. So, yeah, let's go to some of these. Why not? Do I have any time left? I do have time. No, that's a joke. I know I have time. So what am I waiting for? I'm waiting for that first graphic to come up. Just goes to prove I should have loaded them ahead of time. We are connected to the internet, right? Jake, we are connected to the internet. Okay.
So that computer is notoriously slow.
Notoriously slow? Okay. So I'm notoriously impatient. So I think I can get to these sites without. I kind of like to, whenever there's something going on, to begin with the Weather Service advisories, just as a way to organize our thoughts. You can see considerable flash flood watches and warnings from Kansas to Wisconsin. Some of you probably, if you've looked at the weather recently, you know there was a lot of heavy rain out in that part of the country. There were college football games literally canceled on Saturday in Lincoln, Nebraska, and Ames, Iowa. I think it was Iowa State. They just canceled the games because of lightning. But so there remains a heavy rain threat and flooding threat there. Heat advisories in the I-95 corridor. And then the advisories associated with Gordon. 24-hour chain. Okay, so it's worth taking a look at I'm sorry, I was going to make an excuse that I'm really slow using my finger as a mouse, but I don't have to. So, taking a look at 24-hour temperature change, much, much too small to see. But kind of worth mentioning, we're in kind of a stagnant pattern. In fact, much of the east is in this maritime tropical air mass with little in the way of synoptic scale features to change things. So there's very little difference between this time today and this time yesterday. I suspect that -10 in Wilkes-Barre is probably still a little bit cloudy there today. There was some convection up in New York, and they probably were fogged in this morning. Then you can see it's warmed up in the Midwest there, Iowa to Wisconsin, because there it was cloudy yesterday and raining, and today it's not. And then you can see behind the synoptic scale cold front, things have chilled off a bit in the northern plains. This same area gives us, I really like this. You can look at the current departures from average down to the hour. So this is a current temperature departure from average, and any three-letter identifier that is in red is a place where you're in the top 10% warmest for this day, for this hour. So giving you some sense that this is not just warmer than average, but significantly warmer than average. And you can play the same game with dew point to get a sense for the current dew point conditions. And the anomalies are large, double digit in many respects. And no surprise that many locations, really in the eastern half of the country, are experiencing a top 10% dew point for this time of day, for this day of the year. Just to put some context on the pattern right now. What would a modern map discussion look like without wind particles, or whatever your name is for this product? I've lost track of the names of these things in the Pacific, but there's two more. What are they on out there? It was L, so that's M and N.
Norman
is Nora is the left one, and so this one's probably O. I don't know. Olivia, thank you. And so there's Florence out here. Oh, if I have time, I'll say a little bit about Florence in a couple minutes. Here's Gordon. And to kind of emphasize how this pattern is a little unusual, if you go up to 250 millibars and look at the wind flow, note where the jet stream is with respect to the eastern United States, well to the north, way north of its climatological position for early September. And so when it comes to synoptic scale forcings to drive the weather, and those of you who have had synoptics know that two of the fundamental forcings are temperature advections and vorticity advections, which can be thought of as divergence and convergence to some extent. Those mechanisms for us, the next couple days, are weak to non-existent, in large part because of the position of the jet stream. Station wise. Oh, no, wait, I don't have to do it. So we'll come back to sorry, I need to use the back button. Come on. So I always like to look at some local station models. We've kind of been down this road already. So generally windless across the state, dew point 70s, temperatures well into the 80s. Just a sticky tropical, maritime tropical air mass that's in no hurry to be displaced. Current sea level pressure map. Dominated by high pressure both at the surface and aloft. The next front, pretty easy to see right in this trough right here, and an area of actual Canadian. I'm not sure whether we're going to get as many Canadian areas of high pressure now that NAFTA, the whole trade deal's been blown up. But we're going to have to assume that the weather ignores politics and that we will occasionally get a continental polar air mass. And this is the one which will drift to our north over the weekend and eventually swing our winds to the east. Satellite radar. Okay. So you can't have a weather briefing without satellite imagery. Nice GOES 16 picture. Might be a little hard to see from the back just because there's so much light, but it's pretty obvious the sort of area of high pressure dominating the east and sort of the ring of so-called ring of fire around it. Gorton's pretty small, and as you can see, not far from making landfall as it heads off to the north-northwest. What else is evident here? Oh, a little bit of, it looks like it's left over from yesterday, convection-wise. Oh yeah, and it was cloudy in northeastern PA this morning, and that explains that one area of relatively, where the temperature's colder today than it was yesterday. I tend to just use the National Weather Service radar. I know everybody's got their favorite place to go for this because it's all dolled up in multiple colors, etc., etc. But this is as good as any. Again, I really don't expect anything to pop today and even tomorrow, except maybe along the lake breeze front and along the highest elevations of the Alleghenies. So your high-level heat sources will be your mesoscale forcing mechanism today. And there were thunderstorms that popped along the lake breeze boundary yesterday, and some of them actually drifted down here and did some funny stuff around here while I was walking my dog last night. It's like this one cell just went up in literally a matter of 10 minutes right over Lamont, which tells us that the precipitable water amounts right now, this is it's a very soupy air mass, not just at the surface, but integrated vertically. So always something to keep in mind when you're in an air mass like this. All right, so let's look forward. I'm going to do something maybe a little bit different. The National Weather Service here in town, there have been some great partnerships over the years, not only in research projects with students, but in developing websites. And one of the ones is this one right here, where I'm going to show you the GEFS. So this is the ensemble. This is not, so it's not deterministic, but it's an ensemble average. And we'll start with precipitable water. This is from the 6Z GEFS because the 12Z GEFS is not in yet. It's still too early. And so how can I keep both of these on the screen? This is going to be a pain, isn't it? I have to make it really small, and we don't want to do that. Darn it. So this is precipitable water anomalies. So they're standardized. So number of standard deviations from average. And so keep your eyes on the yellows or whatever that burnt orange color is as we talk. I'm going to have to do this. As we go through, let's go through a day in time. So this is 6Z Wednesday.
John, you can try F11.
F11 will do it?
Try it. God knows.
Yeah, that'll do. Thanks, Bill. So 6Z Wednesday, still precipitable water anomalies here. 1 to 2 standard deviations above average. There's 6Z Thursday. And you can see the drier air mass coming in with the lower precipitable water. It's a very tight precipitable water gradient. This is at 18Z Thursday. So even if surface dew points go down a little bit, the precipitable water is still at least a standard deviation above average. It's not really until Friday afternoon, again, if you believe this model ensemble, that got this very sharp north-south precipitable water gradient across Pennsylvania. And lurking to the west out there in the mid-Mississippi River Valley is another enhanced area. And this is that synoptic scale system that's going to make a run at us late in the weekend. By the way, you're looking at Saturday afternoon here. So this is 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Let's switch over to mean sea level pressure and so back to the beginning. This is Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning. So you're looking at a 1 to 2 standard deviation above average ridge of high pressure up and down the East Coast. And the cold front that we pointed out is right in here in this zone in between, right there. That's 6Z Thursday, 12Z Thursday. So this front kind of limps through here during the day on Thursday. And there's that area of high pressure. Now your Friday afternoon. In the ensemble mean, that's pretty significant area of high pressure that will slide to our north. And if you envision the clockwise circulation around the high, eventually our winds have to come in from the east, which would favor clouds. And then by Saturday afternoon, we actually see in the ensemble mean an area of low pressure here in the mid-Mississippi Valley, which then tracks eastward. And that pattern right there would favor, that's Saturday night. That pattern right there is most certainly cloudy here, if not raining, with an easterly wind. It's coolish. You know, if this verifies, I mean, we might stay in the 60s Saturday and Sunday, maybe, if that verifies. And it seems reasonable, at least in the as an ensemble mean. That's a pretty strong signal. How do I get out of this mistake?
F11.
F11 again, yes. Sorry. Yeah, so cyclone centers. Okay, so let's do that. I suspect some of you subscribe to weathermodels.com. Some of their products, it's weathermodels.com. Some of their products, yeah, are freely available. I kind of like to look at this one. Let's talk just a little bit about the tropical Atlantic, just briefly. That's too far out. So let's go 3 days out, where there is still some predictability. 3 days out, so this is valid Friday 0Z. Just to get the idea that there are additional waves coming off of Africa. This would be Florence, and this is a potential Helene. And then just jumping 5 days out, you can see clusters. Certainly one cluster here, which would be Florence. This would be perhaps a Helene, perhaps an Isaac. Again, 5 days out, take it with a grain of salt, but there is some agreement that there's a set of waves coming off of Africa. This is the time of year that this happens, so none of this is a surprise. So the tropics are heating up. It's worth mentioning, though, along those lines, and I want to thank Steve Seaman, one of our weather communications group folks, for this. This is a verification of the 10-day forecasts from a number of the global models. Now, in this metric, 0.5, this is anomaly correlation coefficient. 0.5 is climatology. The higher the number, the better. Here. Notice that on average over the last month, 10 days out for the Northern Hemisphere, none of these models on average beat climatology. And in fact, those of you who live and die by the European will be heartbroken to know that over the last month, based on this statistic, the GFS, the new GFS, known as the FV3, and the Canadian model all beat the European at 10 days out. Now, I also show this because never share a 10-day forecast, because chances are it's garbage. All right? Particularly not a 10-day forecast of the tropics. Just don't do it. It's just bad practice. You make yourself look bad. You make the university look bad. Just don't do it, okay? It's just one of those things. Just don't do it. 10-day forecasts in general are bad. Okay, I got that out of my system. So I got 3 minutes left based on my. So where does this put us? So summarizing, here, 48 more hours of relative steaminess, meaning well above average temperature-wise and dew point-wise. Thursday, a front slinks through here. There'll be some scattered showers, maybe a thunderstorm. It stalls to our south, and eventually by later Friday and Saturday, we get an east wind in here. And that probably means a return to significant cloudiness. Over the weekend, cooler. And as the next disturbance in the Midwest comes our way, there's going to be some rain. I think the game in Pittsburgh's a tough call right now. We're still 4+ days out. The European delays the next wave so that it's dry in Pittsburgh Saturday evening. The GFS does not, and actually would bring some rain in after 0Z on Sunday, which theoretically could fall during the game. So I still think that's a tough call. But I do think that here, the weekend's relatively cloudy, relatively cool. And for those of you who like to look at such products beyond that, at least the National Weather Service is expecting a significant warm-up again here. Here is your 6 to 10 day outlook. Very high probabilities of above average temperatures in the 6 to 10 day period. Now remember, averages are going down quickly here. So by that time, the average here is 75. So if it's 82, that's going to verify. The 8 to 14 day outlook, which takes us out to September 17th, is just as robust for warmth here. But by the time we get to the 17th, our average will probably be down around 73. So it won't take 89 for that to verify. And lastly, a shameless plug for the 3 to 4 week product, which was developed in part from some of the research done here at Penn State under the guidance of Dr. Feldstein. The 3 to 4 week temperature probability has us with a better than average chance of the warmth to continue into late September. So if you've got cooler than average in September for your weather pool, I would say you're in trouble. Particularly what we know about the first 6 days or so. Odds are not in your favor. So I've used up all of my time so that I could take no questions. But does anybody have an opinion about our weather or an opinion about the football game that you feel good about or strongly about?
We got one over here.
We have one over here.
Yeah, so I'm just curious if the amount of moisture that's been dumped over the Mississippi Valley over the past week or so, and we're going to have a dying TC injected into a stationary
Yep.
front. The models are really backing off on much of that moisture really getting to the front. What's your thought?
Yeah,
on that?
the Weather Service kind of agrees with that too. They have Gordon sort of falling apart over Arkansas. I would say that you're correct, and if one was making a QPF forecast into the medium range, I would go on the high end, if not higher than what the models are suggesting. I agree with that. I'm just going to show you one other thing, only because I prepared it, and I noticed that yesterday the European was bringing Florence to very close to the latitude of 30 north, longitude 60 west. So I queried this one database, and then those of you who saw yesterday's European know that it then turned Florence to the west-southwest and brought it off the coast of Florida in 10 days. So I queried the database to ask the question, of all known tropical cyclones to pass within 100 nautical miles of 30 north, 60 west, what became of them? And this graphic answers that question. Essentially, with maybe one exception, it is essentially unknown for a tropical cyclone to be within 100 nautical miles of that latitude, longitude position and end up where yesterday's European took. So now one could argue, well, that's just climatology. Now that doesn't say anything about the current, it doesn't know anything about the current situation, and you're absolutely right. Having said that, do not dismiss the importance of history. If you decide to forecast something that's never happened before, be very, very careful. Okay? Anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you for putting up with me. Have a great night.
And then next week we will have Dr. Tiffany.